All right. Really phenomenal solutions so far. Pretty cool to see all these innovations in action. This is a good stopping point. Since we're about halfway through our event now, let's take a break and talk with our good friend, the co-founder of CUInsight, the host of the CUInsight Experience podcast, Randy Smith. Randy, so good to have you with us today.
Randy, it is good to see you, and what a cool event. Thanks for letting me be a part of it. This is awesome.
Thank you for being here, my friend. All right, let's jump right in with some lightning round questions. You could name just one name. What would you say is the most innovative company in the world right now?
I thought about this, and I can't answer that with one name. Just like you, I get to work with so many of these companies that are out there, many who presented already today. From the partners that we've worked with for a long time at CUInsight, many of them, the same as your NAFCU Services partners, they're doing amazing things. And politically, I can't do that, but I also would tell you this. I think it's been awesome how quick and how innovative they truly have been over the past few months to just bring those solutions that are needed to market now. It's been fantastic to watch, and I know you and I've talked about that.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Literally just had our board meeting a few days ago and was talking to our board of directors on the updates. And one of the pieces I focused on was how exciting and proud it is to watch this industry come up with not only new products, but new delivery channels and everything associated with what's going on. They haven't slowed down a bit. So it's just been really exciting to see. Okay, lightning round. Complete these sentences. Fintechs are
partners.
Digital onboarding is
a must.
Excellent answer. Millennials are
old. They're much older than everybody thinks.
Gen Z wants
everything. We all want everything when we're that age.
That's so true. My members will pay more for
convenience. I think more important than anything.
The successful credit unions of 2021 will
be balanced. They'll have the digital and the in-person somehow. They'll get that figured out.
I love these lightning rounds. You nailed them. They're so good. All right, we're on a roll. So give us some good news. Big or small, what's the best new idea you've seen a credit union deploy in this crisis environment?
One of the things that I thought was, there's a couple, I would say there's a couple, but the one that popped into my head was how many credit unions were doing Zoom appointments. And that idea of how that could even change post-pandemic, the way that we interact, instead of, I heard the example from a credit union CEO that they're not going to get rid of it. You schedule your appointment online on their website. You could do it from your desk at lunch. You don't have to worry about running to the credit union, hoping somebody's available, taking your whole lunch. You can just do that 5-minute thing. I think that kind of service deliverable is something that we'll see just going on in the future.
So true. We use it, day to day, hour by hour anymore. So it has been an adapting to going on for sure.
But, I talked to quite a few different CEOs of credit unions that they didn't have the scheduling on their website. And, within a few days, members could schedule those appointments. Whether it was meeting with a lender, meeting with whoever, I thought it was just, I think it's something that is just here to stay, right? We've seen it in other industries as well.
No, you're right. You're right for sure. So what's the shift you're seeing in terms of how credit unions are adapting now? Like, what does this teach us about developing new products and services? And then also maybe any words of caution you'd offer along these lines. You guys have been digital, for a long time. You're far more experienced than most in the space.
The thing that has impressed me more than anything is the speed that credit unions have been moving in. We have always talked about being a little bit of a slow adapter, sleepy kind of, industry overall. And we have proved that that is not the case, over the past few months.
Here. That's right.
I've heard the same thing again from multiple CEOs that I talk to at credit unions, where they've talked about their job has went from going to their teams saying, we need to do this. And when it comes back and goes, sure, we could execute that in 6 months, they go, nope, 6 days. And somehow the teams get it done. Right.
Right.
And so that speed and agility to me has been something that I think has been amazing to watch, not only in the provider side, but inside credit unions, large and small. Right. The thing that I would I guess if you have to say the words of caution is, um, two different things. It's tough to run at that level for a long time.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you and I previously had been talking about like this idea of people still need to take vacations. Just because you're working remotely doesn't mean you work 24 hours a day.
Right.
That is something that I know that even when we moved remote, there was a little bit of a burnout, I think, after a few months where people were like, you need to find that balance in life. The other thing that I would caution against, and I think that people are seeing this more, is with a lot of digital stuff, it does not have to be perfect to launch.
Yeah.
You can,
Yeah.
as long as you're not telling people it's perfect, you can put stuff out there, test it, make those improvements, make it better. But so don't think that, you know, just everything has to be the way it's going to end up. That's the beauty of
Yeah.
digital in my mind, is you can make those tweaks.
So true. It's like we talked before, when people think vacation, it's, well, I don't have anywhere to go, so I'm not taking a vacation because it's shut down. Vacations for mental health and for relaxing and taking a step back as much as anything. And especially right now, we think it's so important.
You know, I've talked to friends inside, you know, credit unions and outside, and for people that weren't working remote before, one of those big things was like, okay, so you turn your computer on at 8 a.m. So normally that might be your commute.
Yep.
You might go someplace for lunch, but instead you're having lunch sitting next to your computer. So if somebody pings you, you're just like, oh yeah, I can answer that. And
Sure.
the same thing might be at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. That's not even talking vacation. So
Right.
I would, I talk often about setting those kind of boundaries, and I think that's something we're all going to have to see. But yeah, I mean, that has nothing to do with the innovation. I kind of went down a rabbit hole, but it's the
It's always fun.
But I do think that idea of just acting quick and knowing we can do it, and you know, we can be leaders, not fast followers anymore.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So as you kind of alluded to, doing the innovation piece doesn't have to rival the Apollo programs. How can we get our teams to use everyday creativity to add up to bigger improvements over time?
You know, I think that's that really gets back to that idea of like, even small innovative things are really important because they build on each other. So it's that's something that I think I've seen credit unions do a great job of, is instead of like preparing, planning, putting it into a strategic plan for the next year or whatever it happens to be, is like start making those steps. You and I have talked about it. I've talked to some other folks over at NAFCU about it. You know, there are a lot of things that none of us expected to be doing 4 months ago. Right.
Sure.
Like, and if we waited for that next strategic plan to say we were going to do it next year, your members, you know, your member credit unions be like, where are you guys? Right.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing, I think, for credit unions, for, you know, vendors in the space, for us at CUInsight. It's like, we like to make those moves, and they don't have to be huge splashes, but it's just continuing to move that bar forward quickly, to really connect with whoever you're trying to connect with today. So, and the big thing I would say for leaders out there, and I've heard this on the podcast when people, you know, with a lot of the CEOs that I've talked to, is like changing that culture of where failure is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a step closer to what you're trying to get. So if you throw it out there, it doesn't work, change it, fix it,
Right.
throw it away. You know, I mean, do whatever you have to do.
Exactly right.
But you have to try it, and you don't have the time to maybe set up a focus group and do what we might have done in the past to give it a whirl.
Sure.
So,
for sure. So not everything we're seeing is a tech product. What are some of the other services or strategies that you think credit unions should or can be rethinking?
You know, a few places that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about and having conversations where, like, I'm interested in that, like, what's the branch going to look like going forward? And how do you tool the branch to provide maybe some of these other services? I was talking to James Weilman up in Alaska, and, you know, they did like a curbside pickup type thing in the beginning. And he's like, we're not going to get rid of it now. You know, it's just people like being able to do it all and have somebody come out. And so what does the branch look like? You know, I've talked to many CEOs. I was thinking of, you know, Chuck Purvis and the, you know, Carolinas, and like, what does the HQ look like now? You know, if people are not, are we ever going to be back to 100% of people back in the headquarters? So that's been interesting to me. The other, you know, in my house, Jill's big, you know, her whole company's in the DEI space. So how not only, you know, what we've seen over the past, you know, couple of months from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint, I think that you can say it has nothing to do with innovation, but I think it's important that our credit unions are representing the members that they serve. And I also think that ties into this remote work and everything of that nature too, is, how does this work for the employees? So that's been, a lot of the stuff that's been on my head is like, what do we almost structurally look like coming out of this? And, how can we take advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, exactly right. A perfect segue. So as you talk about the social distance and remote technologies, how do we make that digital seem more personal twofold, to our members and to our own internal teams? Just like you just mentioned, that's an important piece.
The teams part of it is, I think it's a tough one, right? Like, we've been completely remote at CUInsight now for about 5 years, and making sure that everybody is still staying connected kind of keeping that culture that you had, that, like, when you're in the office every day and you're seeing each other, I think that's important. The big thing I would say is it's communication. You have to be able to talk to people. I think it's maybe even talking a little more personal than maybe we did in the past, because that home environment could be completely different. We've all seen it, the past few months. Sure, people were working from home, but it wasn't their normal working from home. That's, having to also teach school at the same time, or whatever else happens to be going on in the world. If you don't know what's engaged there, maybe there's sick family members or whatever it happens to be.
Absolutely right.
I think that connection still needs to be there. And from a member standpoint, I think it's really important to be connecting with members on where they are, and where they want to be. So if they're not coming into the branch, how do you still connect with them outside the branch? Is it Zoom calls? Is it, touching in or having, member service people actually, like, looking at all the data out there? We've heard a lot about that today, I'm sure. It's the idea that, how are you connecting with the members in the way that, number one, they want to be, but number two, that's also relevant to them. And I think I think there is a, like, again, a huge opportunity there that I think differentiates credit unions, because we tend to know our members and our communities. So
completely agree. Agree. So with many of our products becoming commoditized and the crisis environment, unfortunately, accelerated some of that, what will it take to keep those members engaged?
I think that kind of goes back to that same, like, the digital part of that question is the connection that we can have with the members, and making sure that it's relevant to them. You and I have been to a ton of conferences, and we always hear about, like, the Amazon experience or whatever it happens to be, where that idea that Amazon or Facebook ads seem to know what we want before we even know what we want. And that's we're like, oh yes, I do want a backpack that can recharge my cell phone and do whatever, it's but they're not marketing in that way where, like, for me individually, I don't have children, I'm not saving for college. If you send me that, if that's the kind of communication I get, I'm probably not looking at a lot of the communication. On the other hand, I like points and travel and things like that. So if you're marketing to me that way, I think people may look at marketing and not think it's the connection point, but I think if you combine making sure that I know, or maybe, one of the big ones that I've heard recently, and I know a lot of credit unions are doing this, is that idea of finding out who's been, who's lost a job, whose companies have downsized, who's, what's changed in people's lives, and can we proactively connect with them to offer solutions before it becomes too bad? Because often we know it's almost,
too
so
late.
far down the road before somebody comes in and is like, I don't know what to do. So can we help along the way? I think those type of connections are going to set credit unions apart. And I've heard of so many awesome stories of people doing that over the past few months. I think that separates people apart. And I think as consumers, we remember those organizations that were there for us. And we also remember the ones where we tried to call and get a hold of them. We sat on the line for 2 hours in queue, right? Like,
that's right. Yeah. And you likely tell people about that one as well. So
probably got a Facebook post on that one.
That's exactly right. So what can credit unions do tomorrow that they aren't doing today?
One of the things that I think this has always been a constant when it comes from me is I believe we need to tell our stories better. Like, all too often, I've heard, you all over at NAFCU talk about this. That idea of being on the offensive and telling our stories, getting out what we want, and not being on the defensive. So instead of saying, oh, look at Wells Fargo's in trouble again, join a credit union.
Yeah.
We should tell our stories. We are doing amazing stuff in this industry. And in my mind, I think credit unions are perfectly situated for this situation that we're in, for this global pandemic, for what looks like to be could be a drawn out recession. All of this, as credit unions that are, put people first, that people helping people, I think we're perfectly situated to be the leaders as far as financial services goes. And I would even take that to DEI and racism and everything else. We can be that social change. We have that ability. And I think I really do think that's something that credit unions can do by telling the stories and how they work with members in the community.
Yeah, there's so many great stories as well. So we just need to start push that. So parting thoughts, these are always fun. What's your biggest wish for credit unions in the next 12 months?
To come out of this as like the financial service provider that was there for people,
right.
I think we have an opportunity, and I will put it down to I'm an analytics guy. I follow it with everything, with numbers,
Sure.
with everything. I would love to see our market share go up because of this. I would love to be the ones where we're the ones that are actually helping, and we're the ones that are top of wallet, to use that term, and we're the ones who people are like, I couldn't get my PPP loan through the bank that I'd worked with for 20 years. But this credit union that I had a car loan with got it for me.
Right.
That to me is, I think people are going to look at these relationships, and I think credit unions have this amazing opportunity to show, hey, we were here for you during this when others were like, nope, we got nothing. So
yeah,
I
always, right?
Yeah, it's exactly it. So I hope we capitalize on that, right? That's a big thing for me. And so I'd love to see market share go up.
That's right. Good.
Over the next 12 months.
So fantastic stuff, Randy. Really appreciate you being here. So great talking to you about all of this. It's always a pleasure. So thank you so much for being with us.